everyone. It's good to be back for the next meeting here in July. I'm calling the order of the meeting at 6:30. Say, Kim, would you want to be timekeeper? I don't know if you were timekeeper last time.
I was in May, but I can do it again if you want.
Okay. Or Diane, if you want to do it.
Actually, I was the timekeeper the last time. I'm not sure why that doesn't show in the minutes, but
Okay.
I can do it.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, we'll let Kim do it.
All right, and then I'm off for the rest of the year, okay?
Too late.
Yeah. Andrew Slager can't make the meeting tonight. He has some issues with his father was in a car accident, so he's dealing with that right now. So he won't be able to attend tonight. And I haven't heard anything from Todd.
I'm here.
Oh, I mean, not Todd's son, the other. Oh, no.
Sorry.
Sorry, Josh. Haven't heard from Josh. So, and Chris. So hopefully they'll be joining us. Okay, we do have some people in the audience today that would like to comment on certain items on the agenda. And how do you want to handle that, Scott? Just
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, go ahead, Diane.
I think that we should amend the minutes or the agenda to do that first, whatever they want to talk on.
Well, is that the public? Oh, this is for non-agenda items. Okay, so there's no one in the public to talk for non-agenda items, correct? Okay, so we don't have any conversations regarding that then from the public. So all the items, all the people in the audience are going to talk about agenda items.
No, sir. The Dave Height is here to talk on a non-agenda item.
Oh, okay, I thought he was talking about item 4C and 5C.
He will be talking about those as well.
Yep.
Oh, okay. All right, Dave, you want to go ahead and you have 3 minutes to share your comments on non-agenda items.
All right, so this will be an introduction, and this is exercising my First Amendment right for redress of grievances, Part 10. This is a brief introduction. My name is David Haight, and I've been a Fitchburg resident since 2005. I'm a computer scientist, industrial engineer, and biostatistician by training and 40 years of experience. I became involved in stormwater when, without any public notice, a newly installed 30-inch culvert began discharging stormwater from the recently approved North Stony Prairie neighborhood into the 6-acre, 36-foot deep intact glacial kettle, which hosts 2 1-acre ephemeral wetlands at the bottom of a mature oak hickory woodland, all in a 16-acre Seminole Glen environmental corridor. Those discharges immediately began destroying both the geology and the ecosystem of that sensitive natural area, with water levels reaching a total volume of 15 acre-feet and 13 feet deep. The entirety of the Seminole Glen environmental corridor was designated by the Regional Planning Commission as in 1986 as an environmental corridor, which is an integral part of the Dane County Water Quality Plan. That designation is meant to conserve in trust those same sensitive natural areas that are being destroyed as a result of the city's inexplicable regulatory failure. Something was clearly wrong, as the approved North Stony Prairie neighborhood plan required on-site infiltration of almost all stormwater. So why did the city agree to turn a geologic, hydrologic, and ecological gem into a fetid, dead stormwater pond holding more stormwater than all the ponds at McKee Farms Park put together? How did this get past the DNR and NR 103, the Wetland Protection Statute? Clearly, exploitation of a natural area at that level of stupidity and greed wasn't the result of a mistake or a one-off slip it by the regulator situation. Excuse me. Nope, the entirety of the natural resource protection regulatory system has to have deep flaws. Over the past 6 years, I've immersed myself into the foundations of stormwater hydrology, wetland ecology, and Clean Water Act regulation. I've read hundreds of city land development regulatory documents, including the detailed specifications of stormwater management infrastructure projects constructed by the city and private developers. What I've uncovered is that since the tail end of 2016, the city has carried out a devastating assault on our water quality of our community streams and wetlands. If you're asking yourself what proof I have for such a fantastical claim, it shows that you are rightly skeptical of people popping into public meetings and speaking off the cuff without having taken the time to author a presentation that provides a framework within which to evaluate any document evidence excuse me, of their claims they put forth. To be continued in the next items. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I assume there are no other comments on non-agenda items from the public? Sure.
Correct, sir.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 3, approval of the minutes. The draft minutes from May 8th, 2023, RCC meeting. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
I'll move approval.
Second? Does anyone have a second?
I wasn't there, so that's why I'm not moving.
You can vote on it even if you weren't there, Kim. We looked it up last time.
Oh, you can? Okay, then I'll move
Okay,
approval.
okay. Any discussion?
I think there are a couple of action items that were missing. I thought Ben was going to check into the cardboard recycling situation at the drop-off site and arrange for a meeting with David Pelletieri. Also, Ben was going to circulate, and actually did circulate, the ordinance amendment in 5F for the salt ordinance. And I thought either Phil or Ben, one of them was going to check into the battery recycling options. So I think we're missing some action items.
Ben, we can't hear you. Can't hear you, Ben. There we go.
We can get those added to the minutes.
And I'll take that as a friendly amendment so we can just.
The other thing that I would like to mention, when we talked about the operating budget, could we include that Josh suggested including money so that we could give plants away, and that he also suggested including money for battery recycling if that is a viable option?
Got it.
Please.
Is that amendment, is that amendment to the minutes, existing minutes, Diane?
Yeah, yes, that was under 4C.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, if no other discussion, make a motion to vote on the approval of the meeting minutes as amended for May 8th, 2023. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say nay. None opposed. So adopted. Okay, moving on to item 4 under agenda new business items. 4A, ordinance 2023-011 requiring tree preservation plans to be included with the preliminary plats by creating sections 24(4) parentheses G of Fitchburg Code of Ordinances.
I will move approval as amended by Plan Commission.
Okay,
I second.
up for discussion.
Do we have anybody talking on this, or do we discuss this first?
We have people in the audience who would like to share their comments.
Can we discuss this after they share their comments?
Sure. Linda is in the audience from the Tree Advisory Committee. Linda, do you want to give your comments?
Certainly. So my name is Linda Brewer. I live at 5733 Rosler Lane, and I'm the chair of the Tree Advisory Committee. So for the last 2.5 years, we've had a subcommittee working on the tree preservation ordinance, and it came as a result of the City Plan 1.3.6, requiring us to develop a tree protection ordinance, a tree diversity plan, and a tree canopy plan of 30%. So this is the tree preservation plan that we developed and proposed. We were here talking to you in, I believe, February, and gave a presentation at that time. And then we ended up speaking with the Committee of the Whole on the 23rd of March. And after that, it took an kind of a stunning turn, and management team workforce came up with a very different ordinance. So the their amended ordinance has now passed Plan Commission, CETA, and Park Commission, and I am here to support this amended version. It reinstates the very important DBH of 6 inches for trees rather than 18 inches. 18 inches are trees that typically are more around 80 years old, 100 years old. Once trees are well established at 6-inch DBH, those are the ones that we would be targeting. The other thing that the amended TPO form includes is it reinstates the list of tree species that we had recommended through the Tree Advisory Committee and our subcommittee. I think it's really important to keep in mind, I believe that ordinances drive policies. It's not usually the other way around. And what has happened time and time again is that developers intend to save trees, but unless you are very knowledgeable about how to do that and have an actual plan, and where the critical root system is visible, unless you have those things, what typically happens is the trees die. So this is, I feel, a very important step in the right direction for our city. And of all the committees, you know most of all the benefits of trees, and I just want to go a little bit through the list. Trees help absorb the sounds of traffic in urban areas by 40%. Neighborhoods with trees are 7 to 10 to 9 degrees cooler than those without. Trees reduce energy costs up to 25% by shading buildings and protecting them from winter winds. What I found is that trees are necessary or desirable for our recreational sites, including biking, walking, pickleball, a variety of things, and of course, as habitats for animals, insects, and all those things important to our environment. So if you have questions, please, we'll try to answer them. I know we've gone through our presentation with you, so I guess that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay, Ron?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm very happy to see the amended version that staff sent through and was amended by the Plan Commission and also by CETA. I have one question. There are several native trees to Wisconsin that weren't included, and I'm wondering if it would simply be easier to list the excluded trees, like buckthorn or box elder, the trees that we don't want included, because, for example, what about ironwood and American hornbeam and buckeye? And the only evergreen that I saw on that list was white pine. And I'm wondering, what about blue spruce or cedar so I'm thinking that if you worked by exclusion rather than inclusion, it might give a little bit more flexibility and protect more trees.
I feel like we were working under some pretty tight parameters, and I think that the directives we were given originally from the city attorney was that we needed to be very specific, very direct. We needed to make it as easy as possible to identify the trees that we are recommended to be preserved. So That is the reason for the limited list. But I'm hoping that wouldn't exclude any of the others.
Can we add to that list? I noticed that other commissions have done that.
Can I explain the amendment? So the
Yes,
Plan Commission
please.
amendment is basically restoring what the tree committee originally proposed. So the language as amended by plan is basically verbatim fixing the ordinance that was presented in the packet to be back returned to what the tree committee determined. The other thing to note too is that Ann Healy, our forester, city forester, did an analysis, and this list is actually, in terms of the places that will actually grow and develop, these trees, this list represents all the trees that we would expect to find in these places.
I disagree with that only because we talked to an arborist when we bought trees for our lot. And for example, ironwood is very native to Wisconsin and usually withstands Wisconsin's winter. So do we have to go through, let's say this ordinance passes and we want to add more trees, do we have to go through an amendment to do that?
We would have to update the ordinance. Yeah. It wouldn't be having to adopt a new section of the ordinance. You would just have to update the language of the ordinance.
Well, I very much appreciate what the Tree Advisory Committee has done and that the Plan Commission put it back to what the Tree Advisory Committee requested. But I would like to see some additional trees added.
Yeah, I don't see, cottonwood on here. I mean, a lot of the large trees we have around here are cottonwoods. So are you excluding cottonwoods from this?
The developer would only be required to include those listed on the preliminary plat. Now, nothing prevents a developer or anyone else from preserving and saving other trees.
So we're not interested in saving cottonwood trees around here then?
Well, if you would ask all of us as individuals, I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure we are interested in saving a huge variety of trees, even more than this, that are 6 inches DBH or more. So this was, again, we have been working with management team, and this is the best we can offer right now, and I think it's a good start. 18-inch DBH is no start at all. That will not do anything to contribute to our tree canopies in the way that we need to. So looking even at this list of trees, a 6-inch DBH is a good start for us, I believe, as a city. And I don't think we should stop here, but I think it's a good start for us, and it's something that can be modeled. And certainly that would be something to bring up as this is applied through policy or ordinance in the future, to think about a larger list. I do believe that that our tree forester was looking at the area that's most likely to be developed right now and what trees are there. But nothing should exclude anyone from preserving other trees, desirable trees as well.
Gabriella, what would happen if we added trees to that list now?
I mean, you would just do a separate amendment, and the final version, assuming it passes, would come through. It could be notated on the packet in the council agenda what the different RCC packet would suggest. I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. My only caution is that my desire is to get this ordinance passed so that it's like enshrined in this, at least in this form. And I'm heartened by the fact that it passed in its amended form through Plan CETA and Parks so far. I guess that's, I worry about adding another. It's like the practical part of me worries about adding a different version into the mix, but there's certainly nothing wrong with presenting like an additional option that includes more trees.
If we added it, as you said, as an amendment, then council would vote first on what Plan Commission and CETA and Parks has passed, and then separately on what we added. No.
No, so the council votes on whatever the motion is that's presented first. So since this item will be mine as the plan commission rep to council, I will do as I did here. Well, I'll move it as amended by plan commission. So
Okay.
the motion will be the same motion on the table. And alternatively, I could move it as amended by RCC, in which case you would have to remove those trees. Or you can just move it just as the motion generally, and then you can amend it afterward. So we only vote on each individual motion as it comes forward, but you can move something as amended by a different commission to create simplicity in the discussion for council. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Was there consideration just not listing trees, but say the native trees of Wisconsin?
Yes, that's how we started, and we were advised to be specific.
I think you get into problems with that, Ron, because some trees like box elder or well, I'm not even sure buckthorn is native. I don't think that it is, but some of those trees aren't terribly desirable because they're weak and they tend to fall on houses and other things. So I think you would get into problems just having a broad category like that. But I really would like to see this list expanded, but not at the expense of jeopardizing the passage of
That would be my worry.
what we have in front of us.
So there is an option too to, if you guys wanted to add some trees to the list as part of this conversation. Just, or you know, this conversation will also be enshrined like in the record, you know, because we'll already have access to this video. We could amend it and have it go to council in the packet. I'm not sure that I would move it as amended by RCC just because this version has been moved through commissions. But there's nothing wrong with having a different version available in the packet if we want to make the point that more trees are important and we want that to be there for the council to consider. That's certainly something we can do. Practically speaking, I don't think I will move it. At this point, I don't think I would move it as amended by RCC, but we could still have that in the council packet.
And that way it would be more of like a record that we want to see more trees included.
I mean, I would consider it part of the record just because of this video, but it will also be, we can request that it is included on the council packet, I guess. But yeah, my primary concern is just making sure that we get an original version of this ordinance passed, and then we iterate on it and we improve on it. Because at this point, this is pretty, the tree committee went through a lot of work and they were advised to pare it down to a more modest. So this is a fairly modest ordinance. I wouldn't call it a tree preservation ordinance. That's why they don't use the word. It's not a tree protection ordinance because it's not requiring the developers to do anything. It's mostly like a planning tool to include them on a preliminary plat. But there is more, we can take this farther. Like you could do more to specifically protect trees or incentivize developers to save trees. But I think the idea behind this was to just get this as a starting point and then build off of that. Yeah. But if there's a list we want to talk about just for the record, I think that could be interesting.
Would you have a list of those trees that you would like to see added?
Well, I don't have the technical name. I have what I'll call the English name, but not the Latin or whatever name.
Scientific name.
Buckeye, blue spruce, cedar. And I'm not as versed with evergreens, so I'm sure that there are more evergreens certainly than just the white pine. The American hornbeam, which is also known as the ironwood. Those are some that came to mind. There's also beech and other ones. And you mentioned, Ron, cottonwood, although cottonwoods are pretty nasty trees, but.
Yeah, I know. Or river birch. I don't see that on here either, so.
I don't think river birch would ever get large enough to be protected based on the 6-inch threshold.
I'm not sure what birch we had in our yard that got got blown over, but it was big. It was greater than 18 inches.
Okay. Well, add I mean, those are the ones that I thought of. Anybody else can add to it if, please.
Should we do more people want to speak? I didn't know if there was more public comment, Ron.
Yeah, I believe Sue Easterday wants to speak. Sue, you want to go ahead?
Hi, I'm Sue Easterday, 2731 Osmondson Road, and I'm the chairperson of the Parks Commission, along with following the work of Craig Rapp and Linda Brewer and the Tree Advisory Committee on this subject for quite a while, and I appreciate everything they've done. One of the things I wanted to address, and it's just more for information purposes, is that while it is true that the trees that are on this version of the ordinance are to be shown on a preliminary plat to the Plan Commission, it's for the discretion and discussion of Plan Commission and developers and city staff to decide what, if anything, can be saved. And that's good. That's far better than anything that's existed before, because nothing's existed inside the urban service area. Outside the urban service area, there already are some ordinance to protect trees, and it's the odd thing is, as soon as territory is brought into the urban service area, all the tree protection disappears. So this rectifies it as a start. But also there's something called Smart Code, and Gabriella probably knows quite a bit, and many of you may, and so if I'm saying anything that's incorrect, please do correct me, but my understanding of the Smart Code is there is no such thing as a preliminary plat process, so anything that's developed in Fitchburg under the Smart Code, this will not apply, so there will be no requirement to discuss trees, etc. So something that will be important following this process, once this ordinance is created, is to see about working with city staff and developers as to whether they can voluntarily come up with some tree protections, which the developers under Smart Code have no requirement to do so. So that's something for down the road. And as for the different tree varieties, I absolutely am no expert, but Anna Healy might be able to give more background by the time it gets to council, if there's a separate list of trees of any reasons or rationales why some of those are or aren't included. And I know one time I had a conversation with her about cedars, and she did describe to me why it wasn't something, unless it was in a park setting, she would recommend saving per se, or putting high on a list of trees to preserve. Now, we all have our own opinions. I have lots of them in my yard. So that said, if you do create a separate list, then Anna could address that at council, and maybe that would be helpful. So I agree. I love ironwood trees, so and others. So protecting more is a good idea, but this was a hard-fought situation, and especially having reached a conclusion and then having it clawed away or pared back by the administration, and then having to sort of fight a second battle to this point. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Can I say one more thing?
Go ahead, Diane.
Again, thank you to the Tree Commission for swimming upstream for so long on this. I just also want to go on record as saying I'm very concerned if the decision of whether or not to spare a tree is left up to staff, considering the ordinance that the staff put through does absolutely nothing. It's not at all in the spirit of preserving trees. So I think we can go ahead with this ordinance, but this, as Gabriella pointed out, this doesn't preserve trees because it's up to, fortunately, Plan Commission, which is favorable, but I'm very, very disappointed that staff was able to put through an ordinance that was so much different than the originating committee. That's all I have.
Thanks, Diane. Any other discussion from anyone?
I just want to mention one thing. I had a short conversation with Anna Healy, the forester, about how frustrating it is that developers will clear cut some of these large trees and then put a stormwater facility in that area, like a little retention pond, when keeping the trees and that natural area might be just as good, if not better, for storm management than putting a little pond in. So thinking about maybe having a discussion with her or with tree advisory about how we can pair stormwater considerations with trees and see if we can maybe incentivize developers to save things from a stormwater context, or at least make that clear in some, I don't know what that would look like, but we had a brief conversation about it, and I thought it was something that would be appropriate for some sort of effort between both of our committees.
Can I make another comment? Would it be possible? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what you have to say, so go ahead.
Yeah, oh, thank you. So I think, following up with that, what this does is it brings it into the discussion immediately, right away. What I found is that when I had sat in on a community committee when the upgrades happened with Fish Hatchery Road, and what happened was that everybody had ideas on how that should look. And that I was the only one there who was talking about trees. And what became very clear to me is that unless there's a strong voice or unless there's an ordinance, which is what developers look at first, then it doesn't even become part of the discussion. So at least it'll be part of the planning. Or there have been times even in the parks when we wanted to add trees after putting in like a pickleball court, and it wasn't planned from the beginning, so there wasn't room for it. So I think bringing it to the forefront of any planning that happens with development, and I'm hoping that will eventually happen with the city and our city policies as well, I think that could make a really big difference, because a lot of people want trees, I believe. I also think there's this great misperception that it's okay just to cut down, trees that are there because we can do new plantings. But we cannot have a sustainable infrastructure of trees in our community if all we have are new plantings and some heritage trees. We have to have trees 20, 40, 60, 80 years old. We have to have them all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda.
I have one last thing. I'm sorry. I'd like to clarify that not all developers are cutting down trees. The developer from my neighborhood, you could not cut down a tree that was more than 2 inches. And this preservation or whatever this is, that's 6 inches. And my developer is not the only developer in the city who was interested in preserving trees. So I think if somebody is saying that the developers are opposed to this, that's not exactly accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a really good point, Diane, and I agree very much with that. Anyway, I agree much with that, very much.
Okay. Thank you. We need to start moving on here. We have a time schedule to stay on. So if there's no other discussion, and again, I want to thank Linda, Sue, and Ann and Sue for the Tree Advisory Committee for bringing this up to the commission, and all your hard work and everything for getting this out there. So I'd like to take a vote on approving this ordinance.
Was there anybody else that wanted to speak?
Oh, I asked, so I didn't hear anybody.
Okay, sorry.
Nope,
If
we've
there's
had
no other
everybody.
discussion, let's go ahead and vote on this, adopting this ordinance. All in favor of adopting ordinance 2023-0-11? All in favor?
As amended by Plan Commission, just to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
As amended, okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, nay. None opposed, so adopted by the commission, approved by the commission. Again, thank you in the audience for sharing your comments today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 4B, ordinance 2023-0-14, amending Charter 30 to allow for construction of private wells on agricultural lands adjacent to municipal water main and amending terms in Chapter 40 for compulsory water connection waivers. Is there a motion to approve this ordinance?
I move that motion.
Or second?
I'll second.
Okay, second. Open for discussion. Ben, do you have any comments on this?
I don't necessarily have any comments. I guess are there any questions that people have? I guess just to summarize, basically it allows for, a well to be placed on a parcel if it's, zoned agricultural over 10 acres in size, and the water is going to be used for the specific uses laid out in the ordinance language. So that's irrigation, I think livestock uses, handling of agricultural products. So essentially this will be, what allows the Goodland Park Farm, the Groundswell Conservancy Farm to place their well on their property.
And if I can just add, as soon as this ordinance passes council, they will be allowed to apply and then go ahead and drill the well. And they did have a chance to take a look at the language as well before staff finalized it. So they were in conversation with staff as this developed. So they're very pleased with this ordinance and are excited to see it get passed when it comes back to council.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, let's take a vote on approving or disapproving ordinance 2023-0-14. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, nay. None opposed, so the ordinance is approved by commission. Next on the agenda item is 4C, the Swan Creek Monitoring Station update. We have a presentation by Stunbeck from the USGS. And there is someone in the audience who wants to make a comment regarding this this agenda item.
David Haight, 5855 Woods Edge Road. Yes, so this is related to Swan Creek, and this is part 2, and I'll get to part 3, which is also related to the part 3 area. So the fact is that discharges from the city's public stormwater system into streams, rivers, ponds, and wetlands are regulated by the Clean Water Act, which in Wisconsin is administered by the DNR. The specific requirements for all such discharges that occur within city limits are contained in the stormwater discharge permit issued to the city by the DNR. That permit is referred to an MS4 permit, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, the first of which covered city discharges beginning in 2004. Terms of the MS4 delegate the DNR's Clean Water Act regulatory authority for all stormwater discharges within the city to the city, which by law must regulate all land development within city boundaries to ensure that all existing new or increased discharges resulting from land development activities meet the specified water quality regulatory requirements. All such discharges must not cause nor have the reasonable potential to cause or contribute to violation of any applicable water quality standard, right from the permit. The MS4 permit also requires the city to carry out infrastructure development to reduce pollutant discharge into all watersheds that feed into the Rock River, including Swan Creek. It's called TMDL. TMDLs are its total maximum daily load. It's essentially a quota system that causes all watershed inputs into the Rock River to reduce pollutants on an iterative basis. Everybody's required to reduce by a certain percentage. If it doesn't clean up the Rock River, they crank it up until the pollutant requirements are met. The city was required to begin that process at least 5 years ago, but only now does it have a project to determine the reductions that are required to put in place through bioretention, bioinfiltration, and other methods besides stormwater ponds, methodology to remove phosphorus. In the interim, every single development project actually adds to the phosphorus load in Swan Creek in violation of that MS4 permit. In 2015, the town of Dunn successfully challenged the plan to develop 1,000 acres within the Swan Creek watershed, which is now Terra Vesa, on the basis of potential for damaging impacts to Wabassaw Wetland State Natural Area downstream. The area to be developed was cut to 550 acres with what amounts to essentially a no net discharge to Swan Creek from new development requirement for Terra Vesa. Yet in 2018, Swan Creek was listed as impaired for total phosphorus without any runoff from Terra Vesa. What happened? First of all the stormwater basins along Swan Creek, starting at Quarry Hill Park, the crossings, and Swan Creek Pond were all constructed in Swan Creek itself. Statutorily, that's the way it is defined. At the time each was constructed in 2002, that was not illegal, but it does mean that as untreated stormwater enters Swan Creek, that the only way to move Swan Creek into compliance is to construct new facilities that treat runoff before it gets into Quarry Hill, the crossings, and Swan Creek ponds. Lest you think I'm nuts, the law makes it perfectly clear. As per 30.19 of state statutes, an artificial water body, which would be what a stormwater detention pond is, means a body of water that does not have a history of being a lake or a stream or part of a lake or a stream. These all are in the stream, the original Swan Creek. They're not stormwater ponds. They're not artificial water bodies. They're expansions of Swan Creek itself, which is why it's impaired, listed by the DNR, coming out of Quarry Hill all the way through Swan Creek Pond, which is also in Swan Creek, because it was originally there, and I have video from a 0.4-inch rainfall event this spring, a 0.5-inch rainfall event this spring, where water is flowing from Swan Creek. It hits a berm before it runs into, goes under Cheyenne Road.
You have up here, it's over 3 minutes.
Got it. So we'll get part 3 later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. All right, Todd, thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing anything on the Swan Creek. It's been kind of quiet there for a while. I know a lot of data is being collected, so I look forward to hearing you share any information on the monitoring station out there, what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. There we go. It's been a long time since I gave a presentation via Zoom here, so my apologies, but it looks like you can probably see my screen here, okay?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Yeah, so my name is Todd Stuntebeck. I'm a water scientist with the U.S. Geological Survey. I work in Madison, Wisconsin for the Upper Midwest USGS Water Science Center. I've been here for a long time and have done many projects involving water quality monitoring. I've been the project chief for what we call the Dane County Water Quality Monitoring Project. And I'll talk about that a little bit, but we have a new addition to this project, and that is the Swan Creek Watershed. And I'll be here tonight for probably about 15 minutes describing why we're there, what we're doing, and what we're seeing with the water quality. Very brief background. The UW-Madison Water Resources Management Practicum folks came out and did a study out there looking at the land use, the water quality, and basically the potential water quality impacts on the Wabisa wetlands of the intersection of increase or changes in land use on water quality. And in this report, which you can find online, they recommended a long-term water quality monitoring station on Swan Creek. So a few years later, a group of us got together and discussed and scoped out what a project would cost, what it would look like. And finally, in 2021, May of 2021, we signed an agreement and we installed the station, and that's when USGS started monitoring there. So just to give you a little geography here, this is the, I think you can see my pointer here. Yeah, you can a little. It's kind of slow, but it's there. This is the Hare River watershed all the way up north in Columbia County, all the way down to Rock County, where the Hare River drops into the Rock River. And all of the circles on there represent locations where the USGS is doing stream flow monitoring, water level monitoring, and or water quality monitoring. And our newest addition here is Swan Creek, which everybody's familiar with here on the southwest side of Lake Wabisa. And inset here, you can see that this X in this little circle here is where our monitoring station is on Lawler Road. And I'm going to circle around it here. This is the watershed for Swan Creek on the north side here. And just to the south of that is, of course, Murphy's Creek. And this area here in green are the prized Wabisa wetlands that lots and lots of folks are very intent on preserving. And so one of the big challenges that we're looking at here is, of course, is how the city of Fitchburg and other developments here in the hatched areas might change the land use and impact the stream flow and water quality to those prized wetlands. So we scoped out basically the purpose of this monitoring, and we were going to establish the current stream flow and water quality conditions on Swan Creek. Over time, we'll basically track how the stream flow and water quality changes over time. And then, of course, that information will be available to help guide management, to help them make better decisions on water resources and to help preserve and protect the Wabisa wetlands and, of course, Lake Wabisa as well. We're generating a ton of data at this location, as Ron mentioned, and all of these data can be found online. If you go to water data at .usgs.gov and you search for Wisconsin and you search for Swan Creek, you can see some graphs like I'm showing here. Among the data that we collect are stream flow. So on the upper right there, that is what we call a hydrograph representing the current stream flow conditions for approximately the last week or so. And so it's been pretty dry, as you can imagine. The stream flow is quite low, below 1 cubic feet per second. And then this increase that we see here on July 5th is due to some much needed rainfall that we received last week. We also collect rainfall data. We have a water quality sensor in the stream itself that records every 15 minutes the conductivity and water temperature. And then one of the things that a lot of folks are really keen on, and that's the loads. Mr. Haight mentioned the TMDL and the phosphorus loads here. So the information that we're collecting will help us find out where we lie in terms of those total daily maximum loads. So we're also looking at not only total phosphorus, but dissolved phosphorus and suspended solids or suspended sediment. They're basically the same thing. Nitrate, nitrogen, and also chloride. And the graph on the lower right here is actually conductivity in the stream. So that's a measure of the electrical properties. And we can find that, we typically find that there's a really good relationship between those values and actually chloride. So our chloride loads we're going to generate from surrogate regressions using conductivity. And you can see this decrease here during that runoff event, which is a little bit counterintuitive. But during this time of year when we have overland runoff, we basically have a dilution. And we actually see a decrease in that conductivity during runoff events. Very briefly here, there are two big pieces that we bring together to compute loads. The first thing is stream flow or discharge. So we go out there periodically every 6 to 8 weeks and we use a hydroacoustic device like that's shown right here. We drag that across the stream a few times and that tells us how much flow there is at that given time in cubic feet per second. And then we go out there periodically during lower flow periods and also during storm flow periods, and we generate what we call a stage discharge relation. And that's how we can generate a continuous stream flow record. And then because it's very valuable to have water quality samples, that's the second piece. And unfortunately, our streams in the Madison area here are quite flashy, and storms have a tendency to happen at night and on weekends and on holidays. So we have some electronics here to help us do that job for us. Rather than having to run out there and collect the samples manually, we have a refrigerated automatic sampler here on the left-hand side of the stream gauge. And that sampler allows us to pump samples, refrigerate them, and then pick them up at a later time while they're still preserved. And this hydrograph on the upper right here with these red squares on it is basically a demonstration of what might happen during runoff events. So we're pumping all of these samples. And then this photo here is actually water quality samples from Swan Creek. So we pick these up after the event is done, and then we bring them back to our lab and we decide which ones of these samples best represents the variability in concentration over that event. So we might select 3 to 5 of these samples for analysis from a smaller event, up to as many as perhaps 8 to 12 samples for larger events. And we prepare those samples, we filter them, and we acidify them with sulfuric acid for our phosphorus analysis. And those samples get delivered to, I should say, the Wisconsin State Lab of Hygiene on Ag Drive. And typically we get between 80 and 120 samples per year. So more samples obviously during a wet year and fewer samples during a dry year. So our first full year of monitoring data was water year 2022, and for some reason the USGS doesn't like to use the calendar year. We like to use what's called the water year, and a water year starts on October 1st of any given year and it ends in the following September 30th. So the water year 2022 started on October 1st of 2021 and ended on September 30th of 2022. So this is the daily stream flow or discharge hydrograph for Swan Creek. Anytime you see a spike here in this hydrograph, that's when we had a rainfall runoff event, or when we start to get into this March period here, this is a snow melt and or rainfall and snow melt runoff. And then you can see we had another event here at the end of May, and the largest runoff event of the year occurred in September. Overall, the weather for 2022 was a little bit below normal from an overall precipitation perspective, and winter of 2021 and 2022 we were about 2 feet below normal on our snowfall. So we typically see pretty large runoff here during the snow melt period, but in water year 2022 it just didn't happen. So there's our stream flow, and I'm going to add a green line on there, and that is the cumulative phosphorus load with our axis here, the secondary y-axis being total phosphorus load in pounds. So we start over here on October 1st with 0 pounds of phosphorus, and anytime you see a blip or a big uptick in that green line there, that's when a bunch of phosphorus is being delivered to Swan Creek. So you can see that it's primarily during these runoff events where phosphorus is delivered. And over here on the right-hand side here on the secondary y-axis, you can see that we had about 850 pounds of total phosphorus delivered measured at our gauging station during this water year. So this is the annual loads for everything that we measured for this particular water year, about 860 pounds of total P. Dissolved phosphorus is about half of that, about 116 tons of suspended sediment or suspended solids, about 21,000 pounds of nitrate, and currently our chloride to conductivity relationship is still being developed, so we're to be determined on that. Hopefully by next year we'll have enough samples to really have a strong relationship. Now, I recognize these loads don't really mean that much to everyone, so I thought it'd be a good idea to try to put them in context with some of the other streams in Dane County here. So what I've done is taken the total load for each of these sites, Pheasant Branch, Dorn Creek, 6 Mile Creek, and the Hare River at Windsor, and then Swan over here on the right-hand side, taken the total load of phosphorus for 2022 and then divided it by the total watershed area. So this is phosphorus load per unit area. And you can see that Swan Creek here is just over 110 pounds per square mile per year. And Dorn Creek is the highest here at nearly 350 pounds per square mile in 2022. Here's the information for suspended solids. The same sites on here again, but we see a pretty different relationship. Swan Creek is kind of at the low end of the middle here. The Hare River at Windsor is the highest, and Pheasant Branch over here is quite small compared to the other stations. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, a significant proportion of Pheasant Branch Creek has been urbanized over the last 3 or 4 decades. And so there's less soil that's being exposed to potential runoff. And the second thing is when the city of Middleton developed that area, they implemented lots of detention ponds along the way. So there's opportunities for these suspended solids and suspended sediment to basically settle out of the stream flow. And finally, nitrate. We don't have nitrate information at Pheasant Branch Creek, but we do at Dorn, 6 Mile, and Yahara. And again, Swan Creek is quite a bit lower pounds per square mile than most of the other stations, about 3,000 pounds per square mile compared to the Hare River at Windsor, which is nearly 3 times as much. Very busy slide here, but this is another important thing that I thought I could talk about. This is the state of Wisconsin DNR established a total phosphorus water quality criteria of 0.075 milligrams per liter for most small streams in Wisconsin. And that's this dotted line that we have on this graph here. And what we do is go out there on or near the 15th of the month between May and October, and we take the median total phosphorus concentration and we compare that to that 0.075 standard. And so that's what all this spaghetti is that you see here for a lot of streams around the Dane County area. And I tried to highlight Swan Creek the best I could here with a thicker black line. By the way, we being USGS, obviously weren't collecting the data back to 2015. Stephen Schooler provided that to me from the Rock River Coalition monitoring group. So thank you to Stephen for that. And it's the USGS data collected in 21 and 22 here. And for the most part, what you can see is, again, Swan Creek is basically on the lower side of total phosphorus concentrations compared to most of the other streams. However, when you compare it to the water quality standard, it's generally about twice as high as what would be desired for that stream.
Mm-hmm. Hey,
so
Todd,
basically, yep, go ahead,
where
Ron.
would you think Pheasant Branch would fall in there?
Gosh, I typically said there's too much spaghetti on this plot already. Otherwise, I could put it up there for you. But it's generally on the low end. It's probably close to between 0.1 and 0.15, somewhere in that area. I can email that to you at a later time and look that up.
Okay, but it's still above the TP goal, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's basically it. We're still early in the water quality discovery process, but obviously we've gained some insights so far. The water quality is generally better than most of the other Dane County streams that the USGS is monitoring. The 15th of the month concentrations are on the low side, but it's still above the 0.075 standard. And of course, as time goes on, we'll be able to better assess trends. Now, this can take some time. It takes a number of years to really develop a clear picture of trends because there's typically pretty high variability from year to year, and it makes it really difficult to see that trend signal. So please be patient, stay tuned. Just know that the USGS is out there collecting the data to help all the managers out there make informed decisions about managing water quality. And that's my 15 minutes, approximately.
Thanks, Todd. Is there a control stream that's for this type ecoregion in this area that can be compared?
That's a really good question. A lot of people think Black Earth Creek might be, but I think you'll find that the water quality in Swan is probably a little bit better than Black Earth Creek.
Yeah, Black Earth has got a lot of agriculture around it.
It does. You go up to the top end there, there's a little bit less, but maybe in the, the very upper reaches up there, if you go east of Cross Plains.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Go ahead,
Diane?
Todd, I'm wondering with that 0.05 standard, every creek that you showed is above that, and how would they ever achieve that 0.05? Is it achievable?
That is a really good question. So first of all, I just want to briefly explain how we came up with the 0.075 standard. There was a large study throughout the entire state done by the USGS where we collected samples at the 15th of the month on hundreds of different sites throughout Wisconsin of various sizes and shapes. And then we also came in and did biotic testing with the fish species and entomology and so forth things. And basically we did a relationship between the water quality parameters measured by biotic indices and the water quality based on this 15th of the month sampling. And what we found is that in general, the stream biology was better when those concentrations were below 0.075. So what the standards really means is it doesn't mean the water quality is bad per se. It just means that it's more likely to be affected if you start seeing those concentrations rise above 0.075. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the Madison Metropolitan Sewage District and their adaptive management program that they're going on right now, this is one of the metrics that they're going to be judged on whenever their permit, and I think they have 20 years or something like that. So rather than spending dollars on bricks and mortar to get their effluent concentrations down even lower, they chose the option that they can spend dollars on conservation efforts throughout the entire watershed to try to bring these values down. And it's definitely going to take a long time to bring these values down. Because remember, those conservation efforts are largely targeting storm flow runoff periods, like grassed waterways and, no-till farming. These are some of the conservation efforts that people put in. What we're looking at here is primarily base flow. So we really have to bring that equilibrium on the landscape down, and it takes a long time to do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Todd? Go ahead, Gabriella.
So Todd, thank you so much for coming and giving us the update. I'm really happy to continue to see the data. I'm really just exciting that we were able to get this done. I guess my first question, which I hope is quick, is that if you ever wanted to put another monitoring station in Fitchburg, is there a place that you would want to put it?
I think most people would say Murphy's.
Murphy's?
I would presume.
And we can talk about it. We can get back to it too. I'm just curious if there's another place that would be helpful to understand the picture of the area.
Yeah, if you're looking for the picture, does the sugar come through there, or is that a little bit further to the west?
Further to the west.
Verona.
Yeah. So Todd, one of the goals, I guess, of putting in the monitoring station was to use it as a tool to measure, construction, stormwater impacts in the city of Fitchburg, and what we need to do to control those impacts to Swan Creek and other tributaries that drain out of the Fitchburg area. So hopefully this still will continue as a tool that we can tell that the more improvements we make, stormwater improvements we make, hopefully that we'll see a decline in the nutrient levels and TSS and things like that are associated with the the standards. So
yeah, absolutely. And I know the impulse here is to look at individual events and try to see if has this particular event in June of this year been impacted by the recent development of this particular area. And just so everybody knows, the way that we're collecting this information and the location of the station and the variability that we see from storm to storm and from year to year makes it very difficult to see those types of fine-tuned changes. And I just will say that if we really wanted to target understanding before and after effects upstream versus downstream, we would probably need to put in a second gauge somewhere further upstream.
Okay. I mean, if you just think about all the development that's been occurring in the Fitchburg area, I guess I'm kind of pleased to see that it's kind of like the line hasn't really gone up, and maybe the efforts that the city is making to control runoff is working for us.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's too early to tell, but if the South Fork of the Pheasant Branch is kind of an indicator of what you might expect in Swan Creek 30 years from now, it would definitely be a challenge with increased stream flow, which can be mitigated in some ways, shapes, or forms, with detention ponds. And the other thing is a decreasing trend in phosphorus over time. we definitely see a very strong trend at Pheasant Branch Creek with a decreasing phosphorus concentration over the last 30 years. And I mean, it makes sense. You take out a lot of agriculture, you
Right.
know, and there's just, you know, there weren't a lot of trees out there, you know, back 20 years ago. There's more now in those urban areas than there used to be, but the sources of phosphorus are just not as plentiful in an urban area, generally speaking, as they are in a rural area where there's lots of production agriculture, and especially livestock, dairying agriculture.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for taking time to share this information with us. And we look forward to maybe having you back next year to see if there's any update for water year 2023.
Absolutely. I can tell you that I did a preliminary analysis of the loading this year, and we're only at about 400 pounds of phosphorus compared to, I think we had 850
yeah.
or so last year. So
Oh.
if things stay quiet, we're going to be pretty darn low. But I would say each of these years would be considered an anomaly compared to what we know can happen out there. So
Okay,
stay
well,
tuned.
great. That's good to hear. So thank you again.
You bet.
All right.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Yeah, thanks, Todd.
We can move on now to agenda item 5, old business 5A.
Did David Haight want to speak on this?
Oh, he did. He gave an opening statement.
No, he's waiting for 5C.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, 5C, yeah. Okay, so 5A, bring your own bag event planning. Kim, do you have any updates?
I do. I'll make this quick and we'll get back on schedule. I did have the opportunity to speak with the store director at Pick and Save and talk to him about what we would like to do. And he has asked that I submit a written request, not by email because he gets too many emails. So I'm going to type up my request and then hand deliver it. And I hope that they will be open to doing this at their store. And the tentative date we've set is September 9th from 10:30 to 12:30. I'm going to double check with them to make sure that would work. That is an away Badger game, and it's there at Washington State, and they don't start till 4:30. So that would take care of anyone, you know, tailgating before the game starts. So I will share more once I have more information, but I'm pursuing this and hopefully we can get it set up.
Now, will that written request come on a city letterhead?
I mean, I guess I don't know. I could put it on or put the logo on. I'm basically just going to outline exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to share with them the last time we did a similar event at the store, which was, I have the information from when we did that a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I don't know, Gabriella, how we handle things like that. If something written comes from the commission going to the public, do we do that on an official letterhead? Or is it just, you know, a regular letter minus the letterhead?
I don't actually know. Ben, can you comment on that?
Yeah, I think it would make sense to have the letterhead on it, I guess. I mean, it's you know, it's
Make it more official.
RCC activity. So, yeah, I'll send you some letterhead, Kim. I mean, we've got it. I think it makes sense.
We use letterhead for the thank yous that we sent out. So
Yeah, it
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah, then it's
Okay.
more official.
Right.
And hopefully when it goes to the top, they'll take it into consideration as well.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Okay,
Great,
sounds
thanks,
good.
Kim.
Okay, thanks.
Now
Kim,
we're
do
back.
they have do you know, I don't know if you asked, but did they have of still a goal to try to eliminate plastic bags by 2025, or was
Well,
nothing
so
about the-
Kroger does, and obviously Pick and Save and a number of stores are under Kroger. So that's going to be part of my pitch as well. When I ask about us doing this event, so.
And then the only other question is, did they have any indication of anything, in terms of a giveaway that they might do?
He wouldn't go into that. I asked
tell
about
us
it. I kind of
something.
explained how we've done previous events, and he said, write out this request. So I will include that in the request as well.
Yeah.
I didn't get very far on the phone, but at least I talked to somebody.
Yeah. Okay.
Kim, the last time you talked about this, you mentioned that there might be other places in the state doing something similar.
Yes.
Is that going to happen?
Well, if I can get this set up for this date, then that would be my goal, is to work in with my plastic committee through Wisconsin Land and Water to see if we can get this set up for a statewide event.
Terrific.
Yeah,
That'd be
that's
So
great.
Thanks.
that's my
Yeah.
goal.
That'd be awesome.
Great.
Cool.
Well, thank
So
you, Kim.
more to come.
Good.
Good. Okay, let's move on to item agenda 4B, the RCC operating budget. Ben?
Yeah, this will be quick. Just kind of wanted to circle back from our discussion last month. From what I recall, we kind of, the feeling was, so far and in the past, many of the events have been fairly frugal. And there wasn't or hasn't been issues with needing additional funding in the past, and it seems to be adequate. But Josh, did bring up the great idea of having the native plant giveaway. So I think that, and then looking into the battery recycling, were kind of the two add-ons that we would be looking for. I think the battery recycling would probably be, that would be a different account, not really associated with RCC. Just because that's, I don't know, a little bit more general, probably be a refuse and recycling thing, I suppose. But as far as the native plant giveaway, I do think, it would make sense to tack on, whatever that may be, $500 to get $200 to get a bunch of native plants, and then hand them out at a farmer's market or some other kind of event where we could also share information. As far as homeowner opportunities, things like adopting storm drains, leaf-free streets, things of that nature. So maybe 500 is might be a little bit rich, but couple $100 can get a bunch of native plants. So I think that was really the only, addition that I was looking at for the operating budget request. I don't know, does anyone else have comments or anything else they maybe have thought of?
I put together a schedule based on our last meeting, and I sent that to you, Ben. But we talked about bumping up the waterway cleanup supplies to $250. It was $200.
Okay.
We put battery recycling in at $3,000. I have no idea if that's enough or if it's even feasible to do that. We kept, we bumped up the annual form to $250 and speakers and films at $150, food at $150, and supplies, we moved that up. I guess we kept that at $300. So I don't know if that's enough for the plants, but we get a lot of things donated, so we really haven't had to spend much money on supplies.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I did not look at the spreadsheet, so I'll take a look at that. But I think we should be set there.
I have a thought. In the springtime, we have our annual recycling event. could we, during that time period, give out a native plant that everybody brings in a bag, or stops by to drop off something for recycling, they would get a native plant and a flyer or something like that. So, they drop off something and they leave with something, but it's like a native plant and some information about, what you can do with native plants in your home, what area.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think any kind of event where people are already going to be there, and all we would have to do is hand some stuff out and, talk to some folks about, the benefits and different kind of opportunities that are out there. Rain gardens, disconnecting downspouts, and, here's a native plant to get you started. So yeah, I like that a lot.
In the past, we've used giveaways to encourage people to attend, and the recycling event, we don't seem to have to encourage anybody. I mean, they just seem to come out of the wall. So, maybe we should save that idea, which I agree was a great idea on Josh's part. Maybe we should save that for an enticement to get people to come.
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe a Green Thursday event on some kind of a topic. Maybe it's about a small rain garden, or different type of homeowner opportunities, rain barrels, that kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's another great idea.
Yeah, maybe with pollinators and low mow May, if that's where we're heading instead of no mow May. Maybe something, early next May, would be a good time for event. I mean, we had an event May 18th this year, so around that time period is, pretty good. And, I think a little more explanation on just kind of the importance of pollinators, would support and inspire more people with low mow May. And, in fact, one of the people in our neighborhoods that has helped out with a lot of events had indicated that he would love to speak at such an event, and thought that it would be very helpful because he's constantly trying to explain the importance of bees to people. He's a beekeeper himself within our neighborhood.
Maybe we could have that for an March event.
Yeah, to get ahead of May. Yeah.
Well, because April, we're usually pretty busy with cleanups and.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good idea, Chris.
Okay, great.
All right, anything else, Ben?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on to the agenda item 5C, City of Fitchburg Stormwater Project Update. We have Dave Height in the audience would like to make a comment. Dave, you can go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Sure. So first of all, I want to say that, Ben is obviously a relatively recent addition, and he's not responsible for some of the things that I've described. But I'm here because I've done a deep dive, and I found that the city is not, the stormwater utility in particular, is charged with enforcing the MS4 permit on itself and with others. And what I've been attempting to do for the last 5 years is bring forward a set of facts that, if verified, and they're easily verifiable because these facts are either in the permit applications that the city or developers submit to the DNR. If the facts that they submit and stipulate to be true are true, then they're not eligible for the permit for which they've applied. If a new project includes a point source discharge into a wetland, new or increased, it is not eligible for a general permit. Take a look at Great Salt Lake Sub-Zero. It is dead, 15 acres of dead. I was there, I have video. I took a water sample, several of them, according to the standard testing methods. A conductivity, I measured 2.6 per 1,000 parts. That's approximately 5 times the maximum, 10 times what's ideal as a high level for a wetland. There's no life there at all. We've got $1.4 million in the budget to fix the hydrology. We spent $50,000 on a study. No one even mentioned the fact that it's a wetland. It's a restored wetland. It's not just a wetland. It's run by the city as one of its regional facilities. According to the MS4 permit, the city is required to meet water quality standards. It doesn't, okay? We now have a situation where in 2016, when they changed the stormwater plan for North Stoner Prairie and dumped it all into the Seminole Glen, now we're looking at $800,000 to push it down a storm sewer into Meekie Farms and load the streams down. So now we've got $2.2 million because the stormwater utility did not do its job. Those are facts. It's not my opinion. The only thing I've ever asked of the city is to consider the facts that it has already stipulated to, the facts that it has gotten from its studies, the facts that it has, again, stipulated to, and look and see if it does violate it according to the fiduciary duty of public officers within the city. When they see facts that indicate a violation of the law, action is supposed to be taken. That's all I've ever asked for. So what I would like to do is I'd like to ask you to ask the stormwater utility to do two things. One, have a public meeting, which is what is required in the MS4 permit, where the public gets to interact directly with the stormwater utility staff, not through a 3-minute deal, and talk about water quality. Second, have Ben or Tim put together an hour and a half presentation on water quality within the city of Fitchburg for each stream and each wetland that the stormwater utility discharges its output into, and talk about the state of the water quality of each of those water bodies. Third, not one stormwater management plan filed with any development has ever been reviewed publicly. So, for example,
Hey, Dave, we're over a 3-minute limit
okay,
here.
so those three things.
All right, thank you, Dave. Thank you for your input tonight.
Okay.
Okay,
You know,
Ben, I'll turn it over to you.
If I may, that bothers me, that statement. I've spent 2,000 hours at Seminole Glen restoring it. I spent 1,000 hours studying all these watershed issues, and I get 3 minutes, and then I get criticized for taking 3 times 3 minutes when it's germane to each of the subject items that I've spoken to.
Thank you, Dave. Go ahead, Ben.
So yeah, this agenda item is more to be kind of meant to be a little bit of an update on some of the stormwater projects, more in depth than what we would typically go into in the staff update. So just kind of wanted to highlight some of the projects that are ongoing. One of them is the Seminole Glen stormwater study that David had referenced. So this study is close to being wrapped up. I think the biggest issue there is you have these ephemeral wetlands in this forested kettle. It's an internally draining area. So once the water gets in there, it basically has to rise high enough, until it actually can overtop Schumann Drive. So there's no natural outlet for the stormwater that gets in there. And then what you've been seeing in these past very large rain events, you basically, it gets inundated, and it's caused pretty severe damage to some of the old trees that are in there. So what we looked at is what are the options? What are things that are available to us? What kind of tools do we have to either eliminate some of the water that's getting in there, or attenuating it to a point where it can infiltrate at a reasonable rate, as well as how can we provide an overflow so when we do get those 100-year, 500-year and bigger rain events, there's not going to be property damage. There's one house in particular whose patio backs up to the forested kettle, and that that property could potentially be impacted in a large storm. So it's kind of a couple different things that we looked at with this study. What came out of it, we found that in a typical storm, so this would be maybe half inch of rain, some kind of a small event. Most of the water is infiltrated in the internally drained area, and you don't see, per the model, this deluge of water running out of the wetland kettles into the Seminole Forest kettle. But of course, we still see in these slightly larger events, your 10-year event, and so forth, where you do get a lot of this overflow from the wetland kettles into the forested kettles. So we wanted to see, is there a way we can increase the amount of storage in those wetland kettle areas, just to store a little bit more water before it rushes down into the forested kettle area. So previously, the city had done some work on a bike path through that area in 2013. And when you look at the elevation data before they did the work, and when you look at the elevation data after they did the work, you can see that the bike path was raised a couple feet. And basically, what ended up happening, there was about another foot of water that was able to be impounded in that area before it would spill over into the forested area. So, one of the recommendations that came out of that study was looking and placing a berm into that drainage way where that wetland kettle discharges the stormwater into the forested kettle. So that's kind of one thing that we would anticipate completing. We will have to coordinate with DNR. Obviously, the larger the berm or the higher up the berm, the more of the greater area of the park that would be flooded. So it's kind of a balance of, you don't want the park to be flooded and unusable. Also, that this wetland area, when you go and look back at old surveys, there was never really a point where, it had, 10 feet of water sitting on it. So that could be, pretty damaging potentially to the ecosystem since it hasn't really seen that much water. So maybe it's raising the berm a foot or 2 feet, at least to get it back to where it was before the bike path was constructed. So that's kind of one of the main things that came out of the study. The other one was, as David alluded to, upsizing some storm sewer along Schumann Drive and installing basically an emergency overflow into the wooded kettle. So the water would get to a certain point, it would enter into this overflow pipe, and then it would go down the Schumann storm sewer system. So that overflow, it's not meant to convey water, in a smaller rain event. It truly is kind of just a safety valve or a true overflow. But to really make it work, the storm sewer down Schumann Drive would have to be upsized. Right now, it'd be too small to handle the quantity of water that would be flowing through it in those larger storm events. So, the project's, it's kind of got two components to it. So the CIP has the Schumann Drive project occurring in 2025. So we'd be looking to complete the upsizing, and installation of the overflow pipe at that point. But in the interim, we'll have conversations with the DNR, see what we can do with putting a berm in that drainage way. And then there's also, I think, a multitude of other small, kind of restoration activities that could take place there that we would want to complete. So this is mostly focused on, kind of anti-erosion, anti-sediment loss. So that's doing things like placing riprap in existing ditches where right now it's just kind of exposed soil, and water will, over time make those unprotected ditches deeper and deeper. So, placing riprap or other kind of protective erosion control mats. There's also that large slope in between the west wetland kettle and the Seminole Pool. That slope is in fairly rough condition. There's signs of erosion. The vegetation back there is not necessarily desirable. So that's another improvement we would look at completing, just to try and, reduce the sediment load entering that wetland, in the immediate area surrounding it. So those are kind of things we're currently working on with the Seminole Glen project, trying to advance those items before the city completes the Schuman Drive reconstruction project. I guess, does anyone have any questions on? Yes, Diane.
Ben, is that already in the CIP, this project?
It is, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Do you know what those costs might be, Ben, for the project?
For the upsizing of the Schuman Drive storm sewer, we're actually getting quotes right now for just to get a survey out there. So we'll see what we have out there for existing infrastructure. The CIP has $800,000 earmarked in it right now. So I think that's kind of a good number for discussion at this point.
Okay. So
those other
design and construction.
Sorry, what was that?
That's design and construction.
Yes. And then some of those smaller, well, I don't want to say smaller because they do have impacts, but placing the berm or constructing that berm, really that's very low cost. It's just, placing some heavily compacted clay in that area and getting some erosion protection on it. So, that's a very, I think, cost-effective quasi solution. And then again, even just rip wrapping and providing some reinforcements into some of the ditches is also, really pretty cheap when you look at other kind of construction projects. So, to complete all that stuff, maybe that's only, $50,000 or so. The biggest cost would be that slope between the west pond and the west wetland kettle and the Seminole pond. So that could get a little bit pricier just because it is fairly large.
Okay, you don't have a map of that you could show us, do you? I was trying to keep track of where you were going. It'd be nice to have a visual. We got some time left, so any other
Yeah,
questions?
absolutely. I can throw that up here quick. Just give me 1 second.
You can just Google Seminole Glen, Fitchburg, and the map comes up.
I'm sharing right now. All right, can you see the screen?
Yeah.
All right, so and I guess I'll turn on the contours here if they want to pop up. So these were the two wetland kettles that I was referring to, and then this is what I was referring to as the forested kettle area. You can see the water has to get to a certain point or a certain elevation. It can fill up in these kettles, and then once it gets high enough, it overflows into this wetland kettle area, the forested kettle area. So we would basically be looking at, with the idea of the berm, allowing water to pond up higher here before it overflows into the forested kettle area. And then with the storm sewer piece, we would be looking at having some kind of an overflow pipe, you know, and a structure probably somewhere around here, and then tying that into new upsized storm sewer, hopefully just to this intersection here. I think that's Osmondson. Yeah. But it may have to go a little bit further. We'll know a little bit more about that once we've got some survey completed. And then
Where was that bike path you were talking about? That
it is this bike path.
yeah, okay.
So it wasn't raised much through here, but down here it got raised. I have the data from before it was raised, so you can kind of compare. It wasn't more than a couple feet, but water used to be able to kind of pond up in here.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why they raised it.
Yep.
So by putting a berm in, we would be again allowing it to pond up in here. So, and that's why it's kind of a balancing act, you know.
Yeah.
You have the berm too high, then, you know, large portions of the park would be pretty mushy all year round, potentially, or for long periods of time. So there's kind of, I think, a sweet spot on where, you know, what that final elevation of the berm would be, you know, to really get, you know, it's not really going to be feasible to use this entire area to promote infiltration. You know, that'd be stacking too much water up on these wetlands. So, yeah, I think, you know, maybe it's a foot, 2 feet, probably no more than that.
Ben, I remember when some people came to RCC to complain about that park getting flooded. So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
And it is something I have spoken with Scott Endel with Parks about, and you know, I don't know that he was opposed to that, but exactly. I mean, it's one of those things where, you know, someone won't be happy with the decision, right? You know,
but it's temporary, right?
Yes, the ponded water would be temporary,
Yeah.
right? And then it goes away. And if it's done in a, you know, smart and thought out way, I think it would be, you know, very, very minimal, right? And I don't know how many people are really going to be using the playground if it's, you know, raining a bunch anyways. So, but it does, you know, the modeling does show that it would provide, you know, at least some level of benefit for being, you know, a fairly modest construction project. I guess if there's no more questions, I can jump on to the next one here.
Yeah, we gotta get caught up on time here, so go ahead.
The other big one, or one of the other big ones, I should say, is over here in Dunn's Marsh. So you're north of Dunn's Marsh. There's been some flooding events in the past where there's actually water that enters the front door of this condo building.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of other videos and pictures of, you know, water just blowing off manhole lids, and it's, you know, it's a real flooding problem. So this study was completed a few months ago. We're kind of at the stage here where we're looking to get final design and permitting under contract to complete this. It's kind of a simple solution. I don't want to oversimplify it, but essentially it's there's not enough inlets and the pipes aren't big enough. I mean, is kind of that's really what it is. I mean, there's so much water coming down here. You can see, you know, there's this whole area that's draining right down here, and there's only a handful of inlets, and it's you know, it's fairly steep, so it's coming down fast.
Yeah.
And it just overwhelms the system. So it's like I say, basically doubling the size of storm sewer through here, as well as increasing inlet capacity. I'd like to see what kind of water quality improvements would be possible with this as well. But it may be hard to fit that in, seeing that this is really kind of a flooding mitigation problem or project. There's already some water quality best management practices here, being this pond, you know, for example, being one of them. Yeah, that's kind of where that project is sitting at. It's
Ben, is that problem caused by additional building, or are most of those houses, you know, they've been there for quite a while and this is just the nature of the climate beast?
I think so. I think it's, you know, some of these older subdivisions, the stormwater planning wasn't as robust as it would be today. You know, if they designed this now, you'd probably see more inlets at some of these intersections. So, you know, water could get picked up and put underground before it was all just coming down to this intersection. You know, I don't know what size or how they determined to size these pipes, but I'm sure if it was designed today, the pipes would be larger as well. So I think it's just a combination of, you know, the changing climate and the more intense storms that we're seeing, and you know, probably just not what we would consider to be an adequate stormwater design today.
Okay, thanks.
Another project that we're getting started on, and I'll bring this up because it's kind of goes on our Swan Creek discussion. So this is Nobel Drive. This is the Quarry Hill Pond. So we're south of Quarry Hill Park. This is the Techlands wet pond that was constructed to treat, you know, a lot of these commercial industrial buildings and their runoff. And then we have this infiltration basin here. And it has since failed. You can see here it's got water and, you know, various aquatic vegetation. It's not supposed to look like that. It should be dry and full of native vegetation. So you know, it would be simple if we just take out, we had some soil borings completed here earlier this summer. Basically they found that there's a lot of clay. So, you know, when it got constructed, the correct soil type appears to not have been brought in. So now it's, you know, it basically needs to have that marginal clay material removed and replaced with something that will actually infiltrate. So some kind of a sand compost mixture. But
so it wasn't designed to be an infiltration pond?
It was designed to be an infiltration pond, but it hasn't infiltrated for at least as long as I've been with the city, and I believe many years before that.
Why would they put clay? Why would they line it with clay if they wanted it to infiltrate?
Well, it's not that they brought in clay. I think that the contractor did not take out as much clay. So when they're building this, they were supposed to dig down until they reached a sand layer and remove all of that clay. and then basically replace it with more sand. So from what our soil borings tell us, it looks like the contractor just didn't dig down to the native clay, which is, so there's basically this clay layer that's inhibiting infiltration through, you know, large portions of this area. So it just, you know, it just was never, from, in my opinion, it wasn't constructed correctly.
So the boring report shows that they didn't effectively remove the clay layer then?
That's what it appears to be. That's what it appears to be.
It's not that they brought in clay.
Right.
Okay.
So how do you make sure that something like that doesn't happen again? How do you make sure
Well,
that the contractor does what they're supposed to be doing?
we work with CGC, so they're a geotechnical consultant, and they have to, the developer basically has to have CGC come out, or we'll coordinate with CGC. So once basically if they're digging one of these infiltration basins or bioretention basins, they'll get to the point where, you know, they think they're at, you know, this native sand or this, you know, whatever the material is that's, you know, kind of the design material. So they always get soil test pits or borings done before they start digging. So they know approximately, all right, if you dig through X feet of clay, you'll hit sand. And then that's where, you know, that's the layer where we want you to be at. So we'll have CGC come out and verify that they're into the correct soil type before they start placing sand in, or you know, the engineered fill. So yeah, we work with a consultant, a geotechnical consultant, to do basically take a sample and confirm that it is indeed what they should be infiltrating into.
So this was built by one of the developments. The development contracted out for it, or did the city contract for it?
I believe this was through development.
Okay. It would be interesting to know who that contractor is, because just so that we know.
Yeah.
Obviously that was done poorly, and it'd be a good data point for when we're looking at RFPs in the future.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's any way for us to figure that out, if it was contracted.
Well, it was RG Houston was the contractor, and I don't want to, you know,
they're a big one. Yeah, maybe it was just.
I wasn't there, obviously, when this was constructed. I think it was constructed in 2014 or 2013. And I know that they did try to basically fix things. CGC was out again, maybe in 2016, 17, shortly after it was constructed. And they had done some test pits, and it looked like it was okay. But I don't think they did their test pits deep enough, because when we went out and did them this summer, we went down, you know, 8 feet, and we were running into clay.
So are these guys going to fix this for free?
I think it's, I mean, I guess I don't know, but I suspect that it's the time's passed for that.
Is this in the CIP? I must have missed this project.
It's not in the CIP, but we had, so we've got these dredging projects that are ongoing. I believe there was 700 some thousand for dredging. And we were going to use 500 or so thousand for a few ponds. And then we held, you know, maybe $250,000 for this repair, whether that's later this fall, early winter, or next spring. But, and this is one of the projects that Andrea is going to be working on. So rather than just kind of remove the clay, put new stuff in, we want to look and see if there's an opportunity to basically construct a better performing infiltration basin. So on the topic of phosphorus, maybe, you know, there's some kind of enhanced phosphorus reduction techniques that are kind of coming to the forefront. For example, people have been mixing iron filings in with the sand. And, and I'm not a chemist, but there's some sort of reaction with the phosphorus laden water and these iron filings where the iron filings somehow kind of inactivate, or the phosphorus is absorbed to the iron filings, which further enhances the phosphorus reduction achieved by the bioretention basin. So there's some other things like that we're looking at to see if it's feasible to try to, construct this as a better performing basin than it was originally. So that's kind of an exciting project. Am I running out of time here?
Yeah.
All right.
For 4 minutes over, so.
All right. Well,
There's time at the end for your stormwater report.
all right. All right. Yeah, I can pick back up at the stormwater report. That's all right if we gotta move ahead.
I should be quick too, so I don't know if we.
Okay, let's do that. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, let's move on to item 5D, review Fitchburg Star article schedule. Diane, where do we stand with that?
Pardon me?
Where do we stand with the articles?
Okay, my article, Go Green, Eat a Plant, has already been submitted and should be in July's issue. Kim, are you still planning on writing an article for August, Earth Friendly Alternatives, or whatever?
Yes.
Okay. We need somebody to write an article for September on leaf-free streets. Ben, did you offer to do that, or am I just thinking you did?
Oh, I'll do another one.
Okay. And then I've already started an article for October. So November, I think we should do a Saltwise article. Somebody can write that. And Phil has said he's going to do a sustainability plan in December or January. So we really only have the leaf-free streets and the Saltwise not spoken for.
Okay, so you're saying November's open?
November, we could do anything, but I think it's an opportunity to do a Saltwise article.
I'll take November.
Okay, thanks, Ron. And Ben, you're gonna do leaf-free streets again?
In
Great. September? Yep. That takes us.
Who has October?
Pardon me, I'm doing October. The topic is the fate of our recyclables.
Okay.
And actually, I don't know if any of you had the chance to watch the video that Chris and Josh sent a link to about, I think it was ABC study, Chris?
Yeah.
I'm including some of that information in the article that I wrote. So, if you decide later that you want to expand on it, but I'm at least touching on it in my article.
Okay. Was that the email? Was that the email from Chris?
That wasn't yes, right after our last meeting.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go back. I've been trying to get caught up since I got back from vacation.
It's a good video. It's a well
There's
done.
two videos.
It's
There's
well
a short
done.
version and a long version.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I looked at the short one. It seemed pretty long, but it's well done. It's just discouraging.
Yeah. Okay. So right now then just December is open then. No one for December yet.
Well, Phil might be doing December or January. He wasn't sure. By the way, I want to thank Chris and Ron for their feedback on my article. That it always helps to get a different perspective, and I tweaked it accordingly.
Yeah, it looked good.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. All right, let's move on to item 6, council updates. Gabriella?
Yes, so we are in the CIP process. Amendments have been submitted. They have not been released publicly yet, but the next step is discussion of the amendments and adoption at, I believe, at the next council meeting. I'm sorry, I should have looked up that date, but I believe it's going to be adopted at the end of July. I can just look at this really quick. Let's look at the schedule. And there's obviously a lot of stormwater projects and things related to RCC. Yes, okay, so the it will happen at the July 25th council meeting, so coming up quite soon. And next, back on June 13th, Fitchburg was awarded a bike-friendly community silver status, which is what we had for several years. So we were awarded that again, which is great. I know the bike committee is working on getting us to gold, but there's some things that we just haven't met the metrics for just yet. And also would be pretty credible. There's not a lot of cities in Wisconsin that are gold, so obviously we should go for it, but it's not like we're ahead of the curve. We're not behind the curve, I guess. And then the shared revenue, I think I mentioned that at the last, we get state aid, we get through shared revenue every year. It's been stagnant for over a decade. And a part of the budget process, there was discussions about increasing the shared revenue, and that did come through. And so the budget was signed and the shared revenue was increased. And I believe Fitchburg's getting another $800,000, which is a huge increase. I think right now we get about $300,000 through the shared revenue. So yeah, it's a massive, massive increase, and it really is going to help us. It was going to be a tough budget because the net new construction is looking to be down this year. So we were limited in how much we could raise the levy, and we were facing kind of a pretty dire budget, but that will kind of help make this budget work a little bit better. So really, really good news on that front. Did want to note that the police facility, the new police facility, that is still moving forward. I believe that the committee that's going to talk about the design of that is going to start this month. I don't know if they've had their first meeting yet, but it's soon. And it's going to be built next year is the plan. And I know Phil has been having conversations with Paul Woodard, who's leading the process through Public Works, about incorporating sustainability into the design, and maybe, if not going for LEED certification, at least incorporating lots of the elements that would, qualify for LEED at some level. So he's been pushing for that. And
did you say Paul Woodard?
Yeah.
Is he back with the city?
So he was serving as interim public works director after Bill retired. Then he's staying on in a part-time role just to work through the police facilities, just because of the nature of the project and how big it is to kind of have one person dedicated to it. Yeah, so he is going to be around for, I guess, through the end of this process. So for another year at least. Yeah, nice. And then a couple more notes. Their plan department has a summer intern. Oh no, I'm sorry. I take that back. They do have a summer intern, but the thing I wanted to note was that he applied and were selected by a UW-Madison class to review our comp plan. It's called like the 360 Thinking Project, and they look at our comprehensive plan through the lens of the UN climate change goals, and they give us feedback. So I don't know exactly what the process of that is, but it's obviously part of the class, but we get some interesting outside perspective on our comprehensive plan. So I will let you know when we have some results from that, but I thought it was pretty interesting. They only select one city to take a look at. So it's nice to have that be us this year. And then one additional thing. We passed back on June 27th, we passed R13423, which was approving city letter of support for Sustained Dane Buildings Up grant application through Department of Energy. So we actually are not really directly involved, but we were basically submitting a letter of support, and Sustained Dane is applying for funding so that they can help multifamily buildings, I guess, to upgrade energy efficiency, and they get a grant through the DOE to do this. But they wanted the letter of support because they'll be doing some work in some of our older, I believe in some of the older multifamily housing in Fitchburg. And so it's really nice that they'll be operating in the city. We don't administer the grant or are directly involved, except for just, putting in a note of support. But I thought that's a great, something to note that.
Yeah, good.
So I'm really excited about that. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thanks, Gabrielle. No questions for? If not, let's move on to agenda item 7, staff and commissioner updates. Ben, you want to give us an update on solid waste?
Sure. So yeah, I got to get that meeting set up with David Pelletieri. Put that on the action items for this. Some other things. I did get an interesting email. There's this new e-cycler in Wisconsin. So they had offered basically to, and it sounds like for free, put up a box or a couple boxes at a couple different locations in Fitchburg where residents could go and drop off certain electronics. So I don't know if this is something that we will look at doing. I think there's still some conversations that have to be had with this vendor, but it could be kind of an interesting partnership there. Maybe you have a box at City Hall, or depending on how large of a container they would allow, you could have one at the recycling drop-off, so electronics could be accepted there. I'm not sure yet, but that is one thing that we're investigating. They also don't take batteries, of course, so that's unfortunate. Haven't found any other local recyclers that would do battery pickup so far. So that's been a little bit disappointing.
Now, Ben, who is that vendor?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting name. Let me see if I can find it quick.
Seems like, excuse me, it seems like it's kind of risky to just have an open electronics drop off.
Right. So, and that there's definitely some things that need to be looked into if we were going to work with this vendor.
You'll also make sure that their certification is up to snuff, right? Their disposal.
And I did look at that. They are registered with the DNR as a registered e-cycle provider. I'm having trouble finding it. Oh, it was Com2 Recycling Solutions. Com2, capital COM2 Recycling Solutions. So yeah, just kind of investigating that, seeing if there's anything worthwhile, if they can provide something that would be beneficial. Other kind of solid waste news. So we've been working on getting the street sweeper wrapped with the artwork that was provided by some students at Forest Edge and the Eagle School. I think
Can you share a picture with us?
I haven't seen anything yet.
Yes, I will share some pictures. I can email those out. I think it would be cool to have it. I know it's a little late since it'd be a little bit far out from the competition, but I think it would be cool to have it in September or October, and kind of have it be a leaf-free streets thing, and we'll do a little thing where the parents and the artists can come down to the public works maintenance facility building and check out the street sweeper, and have some folks there to do a little, I guess, congratulations and photo ops and kind of get the word out about the messages that are on the street sweeper and why they're important, and how how it all kind of plays into keeping the water quality where we want it to be.
Ben, how about if you do that like I mean, it'd be great if you could do that and time it so that you could include a picture with your leaf-free streets article. But if you're gonna do that in September, I'm not sure how you could coordinate that with the Star and still get it in their September article. But
Yeah,
anyway, think about it.
Yeah, if we did the event early in, September 1 or something, early in September, I think that would be doable.
And end of August, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I think that's a nice idea to do that.
Yeah, that'd be
Not what I said, but what you said.
okay. Yeah, I think it'd be cool. Got some really great submissions this year, so it was tough to pick. I'll send you guys all of them, and then of course the ones that were chosen. Stormwater. Well, maybe I'll do stormwater right now. I guess you can kind of hop back into just kind of talking about some of the other ongoing projects here. Make it quick. So I had mentioned that the city had a few dredging projects this year. I'll kind of show you where those were. Actually, one of them was this pond here. This is the Red Arrow Pond. It's a fairly small pond with a kind of a relatively large area draining to it, so it fills up pretty quick. They actually excavated out about 250 cubic yards of sediment and decomposing plant matter. So it's been restored to its kind of original design.
Ben, where do those dredge spoils go to?
So these are going to basically land that Speedway Sand and Gravel is the contractor performing their work. So they're taking it to one of their facilities. And there are some rules or some regulations when it comes to disposal of excavated sediment. So you want to look at the drainage area. If it's anything more than 15% non-residential, so if there's a lot of commercial, industrial land use in the area, then you have to basically do a sediment test, and then there's certain heavy metals, fecal coliform, different things that you test for. And if it's over a certain limit, then it has to be land filled. So none of these tested for or were above the level of concern for any contaminants. So they were all able to be just hauled off to Speedway site. There wasn't, a lot of times you might see them actually place the material on site, but there's really not room for that at these locations.
Yeah, I was just curious because sometimes in those areas you get high petroleum products when runoff from the streets and from oils and things like that, and didn't want the city to be at risk at some point in a later date they become a potentially responsible party for something that was dredge material that was disposed somewheres.
Yep. So, and that's actually one of the things I have to sign a certification basically that says, to the best of our knowledge, the sediment, isn't contaminated and it was placed at this location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other pond that was dredged was the Gunflint Pond. So this is over by Eagle School. Right here. So again, this one hadn't been dredged in quite some time. It had another, 280 cubic yards of material that was removed from it. So it's able to settle out sediment better now. It was very, very shallow previously. And then the other pond, they're doing it right now. It's this Chapel Valley pond. So they're actually really only doing kind of this portion here. You can see, all of this really is just sediment that has built up over time. So they're excavating all of this material out currently. And that's in this whole area. It's kind of a forebay. So, most of the sediment is going to drop out here before it gets into this larger lobe. And we're thinking it's going to be about, 500 cubic yards of material that gets removed from here. So quite a bit of sediment and organic matter that's been deposited over time.
It's pretty cool the way they kind of draped off the other part of the pond. If anybody wants to walk by and check it out, it's a pretty cool process.
Yeah, a lot of work. It's messy work, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And there was actually a nesting crane over in this area earlier this summer. So we were monitoring that because we of course didn't want to, we're not going to start while there's the crane egg in the nesting crane, but looked like the raccoon got the crane egg. So they were gone and there were raccoon tracks to it. So dinner for the raccoon, I guess. I guess those are kind of the bigger ongoing ones. In other news, from just kind of a general stormwater water quality perspective, city staff will be meeting with the DNR in a couple of weeks to discuss potential improvements in the Nine Springs watershed. So we had sent them a memo several months back, just with some potential projects that we had highlighted. And they've kind of looked at a few of the kind of stream bank rehabilitation projects. So specifically kind of in the Nine Springs golf course area, Yarmouth Creek, those are kind of the potential locations that, we're going to be discussing with the DNR, if they can provide any assistance with a project like that. So that'll be exciting. I know there's some pretty severe erosion problems in those areas. So it'd be definitely a benefit if the city could work with the DNR on stabilizing some of those areas. Sustainability, I do have a few things from Phil. Let's see. All right. He's got staff have begun compiling data to share with Pale Blue Dot for the Fitchburg Sustainability Plan. They're also working on a kickoff questionnaire and going through kind of a greenhouse gas data assessment. And a survey and application for participating in the sustainability plan process is available for Fitchburg residents to complete at the Pale Blue Dot Project website, linked from the Green Fitchburg page. So, that's maybe something we should get out there on the social media, because I don't know if anyone's going to find that link buried in the Green Fitchburg. So,
Could it also go on the front page?
I'm sure it could.
And I'm assuming that the next green e-blast that Phil sends out will include it.
I'm sure.
And maybe, I think I said this at the last meeting, something in the star.
Yeah. I think that would be doable.
Yeah, can you also get it put in the meeting minutes, Ben? So if we want to go back and look at it, click on it.
Oh, sure.
Just a link. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. We can do that. And I guess
we could
sustainability / storm. Oh, sorry, Chris, cut you off there.
No problem. Just real quick, furthermore, we could send that out to you know, like we're treating it like an event of ours. So, you know, onto our neighborhood groups and then on our social media pages within our neighborhoods could further spread that word out one more level. So rather than having a low rate, you know, we could just attack it like we attack events. And I think that could be a good way to get that link out there as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe you could ask Phil to send the link to us with a little explanation that we could include when we circulate this.
Yeah, good idea.
Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, we had talked about the stormwater utility billing. I think maybe not this cycle, but the next cycle, there should be a QR code at the bottom of the bill, which will take you to the city's webpage on water conservation opportunities. So yes, see what you think when it comes through. There's not a lot of room on those bills to put stuff, so it's kind of just at the bottom, hopefully visible enough.
A QR code and a link.
I think it's just a QR code.
Well, it's a start. Thanks.
And that's all I've got for sustainability.
Great. Well, thank you for providing the staff update. Okay, we're down to, what time is it now? 8:45. We're ahead of schedule. So down to 7.
Good job, Kim.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ron's handled most of it. He's been really good about keeping everyone on track. So thank you.
So just to kind of refresh the action items. So right now I have what action item for Phil, you're going to reach out to Pelletieri.
Yep, I've got that.
Okay. And then you're going to also now reach out to Phil to get us a link to the Pell Blue Dot and a little write-up so that we can share with our social media sites.
Yep.
Okay. Anything else that I missed on action items?
Yeah, Ben was going to give us an update on the cardboard recycling.
Oh, yeah.
You know, if we're still filling the bins and how often they're being emptied and compare it to where we've been in the past.
Yes. I've got something I can share on that.
Oh, good.
I thought we'd be discussing the SELT ordinance that you circulated last month, Ben. So could we put that on? I mean, we're getting behind the ball on that. Can we get that on the agenda for August?
Sure. Yep.
Also, I'm not sure if you're ready to talk about the dark sky ordinance. Any updates on that or?
We can put that on the agenda for next month. I think that should be good.
Turn off all your lights on Wednesday night so you can see the northern lights.
Yeah. I think they said last night it was on Thursday. So maybe you get to see them Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay.
All right, I got a little graph here. I'll share my screen quick. That just shows trends in cardboard tonnage at the recycling drop-off center. I have not looked into seeing exactly what causes some of these big increases. So this orange dot or this orange line is at the drop-off site. The blue is curbside. So you can see in every January, there's a pretty obvious spike in cardboard, Christmas holidays.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was, there's a few instances where, it's pretty steady, it spikes up. And I don't know what happened in 2012. I assume it probably is just more dumpsters were made available. I feel like it's like car lanes. You can keep adding car lanes; they'll always be full. Same thing with that. You can keep adding the dumpsters out there. It's going to get filled up. So I don't know if that was the reason that they just add dumpsters. I think I know there were 2 additional dumpsters added at some point in this time frame. Maybe it was. Does anyone recall off the top of their head? I didn't get a chance to go back and look when it went from 8 dumpsters to 10 dumpsters at some point.
I guess it was probably in January because we budgeted for it, and then they probably brought them into the beginning of the year. But
and then it was COVID.
Yeah. Just a thought on the cardboard. I was at the recycling site, the drop-off site, getting some mulch this weekend, and I saw some people putting boxes into the cardboard recycling, and they're not collapsing them. They're just putting them in whole.
They're not breaking them down.
No, they're not. And I don't think you should have to have a sign out that tells people to do that, but apparently that's necessary. And I'm wondering, is this, I can't tell, is this by volume or is this by weight?
It's by weight.
Well, at any rate, it costs us more to have more drop or roll-offs or whatever they're called there, correct?
Right. Yep.
And then they have to be emptied more because they get filled faster. So I don't know, maybe we need to have a sign there that they should collapse their cardboard before they put it in.
Boxes. Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot this is in quantity in tons.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot. Wow.
It's a lot of cardboard. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a big dramatic increase over the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know, some of this data, I question its validity. That just doesn't look like a real line to me. I don't know. So again, I didn't get too much of a chance to dig in too much into the grainy detail here, but clearly there's an increase since 2019.
I mean, in the fall of 2021, there was or the last quarter, a huge increase there, almost 90 tons. Wow.
Well, that was still 2021. That was still peak pandemic and Amazon.
Yeah,
shopping.
Boxes, yeah.
Or not just Amazon, but delivery shopping.
Yeah, you can kind of see it's, this is December, and then you see that January spike like you see here, but never goes back down.
No.
Yeah.
It stays, here you get that January spike, it goes back down again. But yeah, this is kind of an interesting piece here where it goes up and never goes back down, really.
I wonder if that's going to be the new norm now with the online deliveries. People have gotten used to it.
Well, Amazon's been laying off people, so I think people are getting used to it, but maybe they're not relying on it as much as they used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you don't see an increase in the curbside cardboard, though.
Right. Well, and I wonder if that's just people are limited by their containers almost.
Well, I do see people putting overflow cardboard in plastic bags, just like the Pelletieri has asked them to do. And actually, that reminds me of another question I was going to ask you. If there's, I don't think Pelletieri will be able to provide this information, but perhaps city staff could just do some scouting to see how often that overflow recyclable is being used, because that was, when it comes time to doing the contract, the waste hauler recycling contract again, that was one thing that RCC suggested, eliminating the unlimited curbside recycling to save money. And we didn't have information at the time to know how many people were actually taking advantage of it. So if there's some way that you can get a handle on that, that might be helpful when it comes to contract time.
Yeah, I'll certainly reach out to Pelletary and see if they could provide, I would think at least anecdotally, they could provide some kind of a qualitative, assessment of that, even if they don't have hard facts and figures.
You would think, yeah.
Okay. That's kind of all I got here for the cardboard recycling.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do we take that off as an action item then?
Yes,
Okay.
thanks.
Any other items for discussion? And so in the meeting minutes, can you make sure we include the action items so we can make sure they're addressed?
Yep, we'll do.
And also in the meeting minutes, can you also add the link, Fact TV link? I think it'd be valuable to have that link in there for the meeting. Can we get that?
Just the link to the recording?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yep.
Are we on to other activities?
Yeah.
I just thought I'd share, if we have a little time, that the goats were back at the dog park. They just left last Wednesday, and they're eating like the wild parsnip, and all these undesirable things that we have there, as an alternative to going in, and we tried to hand pull, and that just did not work. There's just too much of it. And if anybody's interested, they'll be back sometime in 6 to 8 weeks. They did a really nice.
Diane, it is amazing how much work they did in such a short period of time, because I would go by and monitor them daily, and I just was shocked at, like, you couldn't see anything, through the trees, and then they went in and they took care of it.
They were there 7 days, and next time it'll be less because there won't be, I don't think there'll be as much to eat, but yeah, they did a terrific job.
Is there a cost associated with that, or?
Yes. The Fitchburg Dog Park Advocates pays for one visit, and the Parks Department pays for the second visit.
Okay. Do you know what that cost is? I'm just kind of curious.
I haven't gotten the bill for this last visit. Let me look that up, Ron. Let me look that up, and I'll send that to you.
Okay, just curious what the cost is.
And Diane, I'm just curious, where do the goats come from? Do they come from like a local farmer, or
they come from a farm in Poinette? And the only reason that they're able to do Fitchburg is because Madison Parks Department has hired them, and they go around to Madison Parks. And since we're so close to Madison, it makes it feasible for them to come here, because this is a pretty small patch for them to tackle. But since Madison contracts with them, they come to Fitchburg too.
Okay, I was wondering if they were the same that were in Madison.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. It's I think it's HAACKS, Hacks Goats.
How many goats did they put out there?
Well, this time they brought 26, but I counted and there were like 16 little ones. So that's why it took a little bit longer for them to chomp away. Well, even though Kim thinks it was fast, I'm thinking, I thought they'd be here like 4 days and they'd be done, but those little ones don't eat as much.
That's a lot more than I thought you were going to say.
Yeah.
Oh, is it?
I thought it was like 3 or 4 goats.
No, they don't take a lot of space. So when they're all together, it's not a very big area.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it.
It's just mostly that wooded area there, right?
It was only the wooded area. They were fenced off from the rest of it. Yeah. That's all.
Okay. Right. Thanks for sharing, Diane. All right. Anything else? We're kind of like right back on schedule now. If not, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting at 8:58. I want to thank everyone for their time and input tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Good night.
So much.
Good night.
Bye.